Today we'll be talking about solar plus storage sales, off-grid and outage appliances for big savings. So guys, a lot of times we run into homeowners and they want to power everything and we have to set expectations. Or maybe they're looking to do an off-grid project and we want to help them squeeze every little bit of power out of their system, as well as bring down the cost as much as possible so that they can be as comfortable as possible with the lowest possible cost. Okay, so we'll go through some of this pretty quickly, and then we'll just leave it to an open question and answer. We wanted to leave some time to just let everybody ask general questions. I have Dylan Hillman with us today. Dylan is our engineering support manager. When you call our main line, 972-575-8875, and press option 2, Dylan's team is the one that will answer and be available to answer any field questions, technical questions. They can coach you through your single line drawings, an amazing engineering team. So I encourage you to take advantage of that resource. It's free to all of our customers. It's worth hundreds of dollars per hour in consultation. So really, we want to bring value to you guys and really coach you through everything. I encourage you to ask questions in the chat, and we will get to those questions one by one. Okay, so let's get started, guys. I'll go through a little bit about us. I generally do that every time we all get together. Then we'll talk about some of the goals today about how to increase a customer's power output and lowering their costs significantly, whether it's battery backup on-grid or off-grid. I'll talk about 3 key items, appliances, that tend to draw tons of power, but are also key to a high level of comfort for the customer. Most customers want to have a high level of comfort, and we are going to show you how you can show them how these 3 items can be modified to really get the best bang for their buck. Okay, we'll do some cost comparisons on that and leave it to question and answer. So let's hop right into it. At SolArc, we're a veteran-owned engineering company that is dedicated to helping families and businesses be less dependent on our vulnerable power grid in the most affordable way possible. We have our flagship product here, the SolArc 8K and 12K. It is the most efficient, affordable, and powerful solar storage inverter in the world. We've been in business now 7 years. We have 0 requested refunds. Now, that's not to say we haven't had our share of issues, but we are always taking care of our customers, and we have not had one person ask for their money back. During this time of COVID-19, last week and the week before, we touched on this. Again, we are accelerating production, and we have tons of inventory. We are accelerating to make sure that there is no supply chain disruption and that all of your projects that are in the pipeline can be quickly fulfilled. Okay, we're here for you, and we understand that these are tough times. So if you need anything from SolArc, just give us a call. We're fully operational. We are hiring fiercely right now, guys, and we have 0 employee turnover. We're very proud of that. The company's growing now 200% year over year. It's been doing that for 6 years. We have 0 debt on our balance sheet. And again, I'd like to emphasize we take pride in our amazing customer support, especially on the engineering side. Really big shout out to those guys. We want to be approachable, friendly, and helpful, even for your homeowners that may not know a lot about us or about solar plus storage. Encourage them to call us. We talk to everybody. We have humble beginnings working with DIYers, so we get it, and we are always happy to speak with your customers. Okay, almost forgot, we are an award-winning company. We are now a 2020 semifinalist in the American Made Solar Prize, and we have won other awards for our technology and innovation. So the goal today is to talk a little bit more about how to deliver more power and lower cost to help your customer double benefit. You want to sell more deals, and we're going to show you how to do that, showing the customer value. Okay? We want you to be confident to both sell and design anywhere, anytime, in any situation. And of course, you have access to our 7-day-a-week support with a product that has military reliability. It will give your customers peace of mind. And of course, we want you to be able to give your customers awesome suggestions. The more knowledgeable you are, then the more educated and helpful that you can be to the customer, and they will really appreciate your expertise. Okay, so I have this joke here, I don't want to spend any money, but I want to power everything. We frequently get a lot of calls from homeowners that don't really understand all of the nuances of what they can and cannot power, and sometimes they get sticker shock. So we're going to go through some ways where, again, you can help them save a lot of money. If you haven't already, check out on our YouTube channel the Solar Plus Storage Sales Overview webinar that I did a couple weeks back. I go through this chart in a bit more detail. I'm going to revisit it right now. So again, when talking with a customer, whether they're off-grid or they are on-grid but need battery backup, we go through a checklist process after we get their utility bill. It's really important so we can size the number of inverters that are needed for the job. So these are the key questions: asking how much AC they need, how much or how many hot water heaters and what type, gas or electric, what type of dryer do they have, is it a gas or electric, their oven and cooktop, big tools, electric vehicle. A lot of people are buying plug-in hybrids or maybe buying an electric vehicle. Are they considering a generator? A lot of customers want a generator, or they're considering a generator, or they have a generator, and that's a deal breaker for a lot of them, whether they move forward or not. SolArc can work with generators, just about any kind, even the small ones that produce what we call dirtier power with higher total harmonic distortion. And then another question is, do they already have solar? So they would know whether or not, or you would know whether or not they would need to possibly AC couple or have some, particular needs for their design. Okay, guys. So over here are some appliances that we will talk about here that can really save your customers a ton of money. Okay. So pro tip, guys, if they're going off grid, or they're possibly building a new home, so they plan to buy new appliances, or maybe you can create a total whole home solution for them where it's an energy efficiency package. And what we're going to show you here is, what would they rather do? If they already have a water heater, a dryer, or an AC and it's really old, it's going to cost them a whole lot more in inverters, batteries, and solar PV than if they just got these new appliances and got just a smaller inverter bank and battery bank with less PV. Okay, it's going to save them a lot of money. I see, Jason, you have a question. Will SolArc work only with a standby generator, or a manual hookup generator, or PTO generator? Okay, great question. I'm going to let Dylan handle that question later, so we'll come back to that shortly. Let's get through everything, and then we will come back to your questions. But that is a great question, and we'll get to that in our open Q&A. Okay, so guys, hot water. If they're using an electric hot water heater, look at the bottom left-hand side of the screen. An old hot water heater will use 4,500 watts. Regular electric water heaters use 4,500 watts. That's a ton of power. That is almost half of what a SolArc can pass through. And SolArc is still one of, if not the most powerful inverter on the market. So how do we give them the same amount of comfort with a lot less power and save them money on energy efficiency? Well, heat pump water heaters are awesome. So I encourage you to Google heat pump water heaters, read all about them. They use much less power. They're extremely efficient. Heat pumps move heat in and out, which on a simple level is much more efficient. And so looking at this example, 600 to 1200 watts versus 4,500 watts, that's an amazing amount of savings and power. They may have to, of course, wait a little bit longer to let the water heat up. But again, for off-grid or emergency grid down situations, that's a small price to pay for a huge amount in savings. Okay. Next is a heat pump dryer. So same concept. I put up here some websites that you can look at that I thought explain the concept pretty nicely, or you can share these websites with your customers to give them some suggestions. So a regular dryer takes about 5,000 watts. That's a ton of power. Now, if we come down here, a heat pump dryer is only going to use about 1,500 watts. So again, it may take a little longer to dry the clothes, but it uses less power, and I know that a lot of these heat pump dryers actually do not require any kind of ventilation. So it can be really convenient, like in apartment buildings, or maybe you're in an area that's very urban, or maybe it's an off-grid setup where that's just a consideration. So the idea here, though, is it uses much less power, and you can still have the same level of comfort. Okay, guys? So heat pump water heaters and heat pump dryers. Okay, next. Heating and cooling, air conditioning. This is such a key item for so many homeowners. I know that I want my home to be comfortable every day, so I wanted it to be a nice crisp, 72 degrees Fahrenheit or 23 degrees Celsius. In the U.S. and in a lot of North America, we have, these large AC units, which are let's say we have a 3-ton unit for a 2,000, maybe 2,500 square foot home. That's going to use 3,500 watts, and it's going to have an air handler that's going to use another 500 watts. Plus, it requires a lot of startup current. So the SolArc, again, it has 20 kilowatts peak power. It's extremely powerful. You can start up one of these large central air conditioning units off-grid, not a problem. But let's talk about that for a little bit. That is very expensive, because you're going to need more than maybe 2 or 3 SolArcs to achieve that. So if we come over here, we encourage you to go to www.highseer.com. They offer these mini split air conditioners. We are not affiliated with them. We just really like their website, and they have great quality and great prices. So what this is a mini split air conditioner. You can see in this photo where the outdoor unit is, and then each individual room has this unit attached to the wall. So you use the remote control to turn it on. Each room in the home can have customization, which is really nice. So if your customers' children like it a little bit colder in one room, and the parents like it a little bit warmer, no problem. They can just each customize and dial in the temperature that they want and run it or not run it, as well as it's not going to turn on or turn off just one big unit all the time. It's much more efficient because each one can run as low as 600 watts, and it's only going to run the unit that you turn on. So these can run one at a time, save a lot of money, save a lot of energy, and maintain an equal level of comfort for a home. So these are really, really awesome, especially in off-grid. And then we have a lot of customers in Texas that are interested in storm protection. Perhaps you're in the Carolinas. Perhaps you're in an area like Texas where you get tornadoes or big thunderstorms. When the power goes out for 3 to 5 days during a big storm, 95 degree Fahrenheit summer days are no fun. So what I suggest to customers who are on a budget is, if you have a larger home, maybe let's say 2,000 or 2,500 square feet, get one of these mini splits for one room and call it the cozy room. just create a cozy room. Install it there, and then you always have it. If the grid goes down and you're running off batteries, you can still get everybody in that room, get your electronic devices, your puzzles, your playing cards, and just wait it out in the cozy room. Okay, so that's a nice solution in larger urban areas to not have to power these big hogs if the homeowner does not want to spend that kind of money for it. Okay, so let's compare the costs. So there's a lot to unpack here. So I'm going to start here at the top. Better appliances are better savings, bigger savings, which means a happier customer. Okay, so if we go apples to apples on 3 tons of air conditioning, and central AC is going to use 4,000 watts, and I'm estimating here because higher end systems cost more, lower end systems cost less, but let's just say that's about $6,000. Over here we have a mini split with the same 2 to 3 tons. It only uses 1,800 watts. I wrote here $4,500. Sometimes they're less, but I tried to leave some cushion for installation. If we have a cheap hot water heater or an old one, it's using 4,500 watts, that's about $600. A heat pump water heater, it is more expensive, much more expensive, but again, we're talking about why that investment will pay off. A cheap dryer will cost about $600, take about 5,000 watts, versus the heat pump dryer we talked about, 1,500 watts. Again, more expensive, but a better use of the dollars available, better investment. So we'll talk about that. And then electric stove, and I didn't show that, but we can see here a regular stove versus an induction stove cooktop. These are about the same price. Of course, this is only one burner, but these are awesome for when the grid is down and you need to power things, or if you're off grid, or you're going. I've even found camping where campsites even have a place for you to plug in, because they use magnetism. They're induction. They don't actually heat up, so they're actually really good for fire safety. Okay, so anyhow, let's look at the total here. These appliances altogether come to 7,800, and the amount of wattage used is 16,000 watts. Let's just say 16,000 if they were all on at the same time. Okay, so if we come over here, it's the same cost, 7,800, but the appliances are only going to use 6,000 watts. 16,000 or 6,000. So then we come down here. So to power 16,000 watts of these old appliances, we would need 2 SolArc 12Ks, 38 kilowatt hours of storage, plus an extra 4 kilowatts of solar PV relative to our example over here. So we would need an 11 kilowatt system with 2 SolArcs, 2 batteries, and for them to power all of these items without batteries at night, they would need a larger generator. They would probably need some 2-wire start Generac or Kohler or something. Whereas over here, they only need 7 kilowatts of solar, 1 SolArc 12K, 19 kilowatt hours, so half the battery storage, which would only cost them $21,000 versus over here $46,000. Then they can add a smaller generator, because SolArc, we're probably the only company out there that can tie in a really small generator that has high harmonic distortion and dirtier power, let's say, that only costs about $3,000. So right here, your customer can have, I would say, virtually the same level of comfort for almost half. So the value of investing in these new appliances can save them a whole lot of money and maintain the same level of comfort if they're, especially if they're off-grid. Now, on-grid, a lot of customers don't maybe have the plan, or they don't want to go through the trouble to get new appliances, and that's maybe a hassle for them. So at SolArc, we have a feature that's called load management. And load management using the smart load is a really easy way to help them manage power during the daytime and with the batteries if the grid goes down, if they're grid connected. Okay. So the goal here is we really want to make this about the customer, make it affordable. We really think we've achieved that, and we keep bringing down the cost for the customer. You can power really heavy stuff. SolArc, one SolArc can power almost what it takes 2 or 3 inverters of other companies. We have a 10-year warranty. We talked about that before, using HALT testing, highly accelerated life testing, using a battlefield mindset to make sure that the hardware is robust and that the software is stable, and of course protecting their devices, computers, etc., against grid failure with our patented UPS transfer, the instantaneous switch. So here again, we can talk about this a little bit during our question and answer, but again, this is the SolArc, where you can DC couple and AC couple everything. I call it the Swiss Army knife of inverters because you can pretty much do just about anything. You can AC couple string inverters, microinverters. You can work with any battery. Generators, it can do really, really big stuff. Heavy power, we're Texan, so we like to power big things. And it can also do 3-phase. So 2 of the SolArcs can actually do true 3-phase, and for perfect balancing, you would use 3 SolArcs, okay? Multiple modes, grid cell, 0 export in time of use, so if there's no net metering, and then we are a grid forming inverter. So that's super important when we talk about a customer, if they're going off grid, they're building a new home, and they're using all of the different appliances that we talked about. It's grid forming, pure sine wave. And then smart load for homeowners that are in urban areas that are grid connected, but they still are trying to maximize their efficiency and reduce the amount of batteries. So our smart load feature helps customers save 10 to 40% on batteries, okay? Flexibility in your installation with DC and AC coupling. So again, I've talked about this before, but I'll always talk about it. I'm super proud of our engineering team. They're an amazing group. If you have any technical questions or you're trying to put something together, 972-575-8875, just option 2, or you can email them at support@solarc.com. 7 days a week, someone will get back with you, okay? We can remotely program and debug the SolArc, so your customers can have peace of mind that we'll always be there if they want us to be there. And again, check out our YouTube channel. We're always uploading a lot of great content. Dylan does a lot of technical focused webinars, did an awesome webinar last week on parallel stacking and another one on battery sizing. I really encourage you to check that out. They can also be found on our support tab on our website at www.solarc.com. Okay, guys, we check the systems quite frequently, and we call customers. So we try to be proactive, not reactive, as much as possible. Okay, guys, so I'm going to just emphasize you're not alone. Always call us. You can get together with us with this a scheduled appointment. If you have a meeting with a homeowner, I do this quite frequently where installers will call me. They have an appointment. We set a time, and they call me on a conference with the homeowner. We can help you answer any questions that the homeowner may have. We found that it brings a lot of value and peace of mind to the homeowner because they have a direct line to the manufacturer to get straight answers. Okay, so not to say that you wouldn't give them straight answers, but I found that some homeowners they feel comfortable when the manufacturer speaks with them, because in their eyes it's not just one contractor speaking to them, but it's any contractor can work with us. So they, especially as a first-time customer, they're more conservative, feel very comfortable after speaking with us. Okay, guys? So if you haven't already joined our network, go to this website link, sol-arc.com, install our distributor if you're interested in distributing or carrying our product. And I will now move on to question and answer. So if I've gone too fast through any of the slides today, don't feel shy. We can always go back over something. I just wanted to leave more time today for Q&A. So I see that Jason again, will SolArc work only with the standby generator or manual hookup generator or PTO generator? So Dylan, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Yeah, so we can work with any 240-volt generator. So whether it's a standby, a manual, or a PTO, no big deal. It just needs to be usually bigger than about, I think, 3 kW. It's probably the smallest one we've ever worked with, and then upwards of however big you want to go. We have a pretty good track record of working with every generator that we encounter, as long as it's 240 volts, so shouldn't be a problem. And then I see another one here. What is the pass-through rating on the SolArc? It is 50 amps at 240, so 12,000 watts.
So I'm showing guys, here's the SolArc sticker in the bottom part, maximum continuous AC pass-through, 12,000 watts, 50 amps. Right here. Okay. Okay, guys, this is your chance. If you just have any questions, maybe, we have about 30 on the chat and call today. So if you have maybe, let's say do you have any specific projects that you're working on? Okay, we have Solar Bruce. What is the smart load feature and how does it work? And Liam, what is the largest size of inverter can you AC couple?
Okay.
So what the smart load feature does? Oh yeah, go ahead, Dylan.
Oh, sure. Sorry. I'm going to jump in here. So for the smart load, that is a feature that allows you to do automatic load shedding using the third breaker on the SolArc, which is the generator breaker. So if you weren't using that port for a generator, you could use that port as a programmable smart load. Whereas basically if the batteries get below some threshold value, say it's 80% full, then those loads will not receive power. And then vice versa. It allows you to get away with a smaller battery bank to have the same performance, because you can have certain loads like water heaters and air conditioners only run during the day when you have excess solar power for them to function. If you're asking specifically how to program smart loads, I did go over that in a few other webinars, and I don't have this deck doesn't have the screens I'd like to show you, but it's pretty straightforward. You just set your thresholds and kind of go from there. Next question here is, what is the largest size inverter you can AC couple? So that's going to be a couple different answers. On the 8K and the 12K, you can do 7.6 kW of AC coupled inverters, either one big one or several microinverters up to that amount on the generator input, or 9.6 kW on the grid input. And then with the 12K, of course, you can stack multiple 12Ks and then keep stacking another 9.6 for each system on the load side. So you can get pretty big with that. Will the SolArc auto start 3-wire generators? The auto start functionality that is built into the SolArc is a 2-wire start. We do have some relay things that we've done to get around that issue to get 3-wire, 4-wire generator starts. You can usually trigger those based off of our already existing 2-wire start, but it does require some kind of external logic or another relay, usually for those 3-wire start generators. In a grid-tied application with existing HVAC that uses 4,000 watts when running since off-grid continuous is 8,000 watts, SolArc 12K. Will SolArc run the 4,000 watts of HVAC? If I get what you're asking, yes. So the rule of thumb for air conditioning is 3 tons of AC per inverter. So we have 20 kW of peak power for 5 seconds with each inverter. So if you have an 8K unit, you can do usually up to a 3-ton AC unit with that. And then if you have a 12K unit, you can do 3 tons per unit, and you can stack multiple 12Ks. So usually a decent rule of thumb is for startup current for inductive loads, usually whenever they first turn on, they use 3 to 5 times their continuous running power for a very short period of time. So that's a good way to guesstimate what the peak will be for a given motor or HVAC system. But again, about 3 tons or 36,000 BTUs of air conditioning per SolArc. Can we go over the wattage ratings on your spec sheet and clarify the differences? Perhaps clarifying on the operation mode of the inverter for each. Sure. Maybe let's go ahead and get over to the spec sheet. Do we have a spec sheet in this deck?
I have our label.
Oh, okay, yeah, that'll work. Close enough. So the wattages for various operations or modes of operations are as follows. So if you have a 12K and you've got DC coupled panels and some batteries and all that, and you're just doing grid cell, you're going to be able to grid cell at 9,000 watts from the solar panels directly to the grid. But you'll simultaneously be able to do another 3 kW of production on the DC from the DC coupled panels to your batteries for a total PV generation of 12 kW. Now that's when the grid is up. When the grid is out, you can do 8,000 watts from either the panels or the batteries to your loads, to your AC loads, and then an additional 4 kW if you have enough DC coupled panels to charge the batteries simultaneously. So again, your maximum is going to be 12 kW of total production, but your AC output is going to be limited to 8 kW, which is about 33 amps or so at 240 on each leg. And then, it gets a little bit more nuanced if you have AC and DC coupling happening at the same time, because your continuous power can kind of creep up that way. So let's say you had 16.5 kW DC coupled, while you also had another 2 kW AC coupled, then you could increase you have all the same continuous and peak ratings as you did before with the regular DC coupled example that I just said, plus the 2 kW of continuous power would be available should you have somewhere to put it. So if the batteries are full, obviously we have to tell the AC coupled panels to stop production. So we have to have somewhere to put that power, but it's kind of a complicated example there. I hope that answered your question, though. Can you recommend a compatible smart meter with export limiting? Well, we have CT sensors that come with each system, and we have a meter zeroing feature built into the SolArc, so the meter's not super important for that. Can a SolArc work with an existing tankless water heater on an off-grid install? Well, technically the answer is yes, but usually the answer is no. Most tankless water heaters are complete power hogs. They'll use 14, 15, 18,000 watts of power all at once. So, if it's a small one, like sometimes I've seen some really small ones that are just for the one shower head or something, sometimes you can get those to work, but they're a resistive load if you have the electric ones. Now, if they're gas, then sure, that's no big deal. Go ahead. We can spark it all day long, but those bigger on-demand water heaters can be a challenge.
I've also heard that those types of electric tankless water heaters in urban areas require you to upgrade your panel to 300 or 400 amps. Is that so? I don't know. I've heard that. I don't know that for sure.
It would depend on how big of a unit you're installing, but I could see it.
Yeah.
They can pull quite a bit.
Okay. Could you explain the basic theory of operation? I'll say the question so everybody, if you're not on the screen, can hear. Could you explain the basic theory of operation for the SolArc when using the 12K grid tied with batteries for backup or self-consumption?
Okay. Or you want to take that one, Andy?
Sure. So when using the 12K grid tied with batteries for backup or self-consumption, in theory, you would use the limited to home, zero export mode. This way that it will push all the power using the CTs, the current transformers, back to the home. And that's really easy to set up in the settings. So that's the high level. Maybe Dylan, if you can go into it a little more deeply, but maybe best practices on what you've seen.
If I understand the question correctly, I think he's asking for a prioritization mode of operations kind of thing. So first of all, solar panels are always the first priority. So if you're in a standard install situation, grid tied with batteries, and you're doing self-consumption, you're going to produce as much power on the panels as you can to sell back to the load or to power the loads in the load panel and to backfeed the main panel up until you hit 0 on the home meter. So it'll produce as much as it can until the home meter is 0 and it's fulfilling all the loads in the home and the critical load panel. From that point on, it will use the extra solar power above and beyond that amount to charge up the batteries. And then if the batteries are full and the all house and critical backup panel loads are fulfilled, then it will curtail the DC or the AC PV production. Now, usually if you have AC coupled panels, so the customer already has a net metering agreement, so you should probably just be in grid cell mode anyways, but we do have frequency curtailment to achieve something to that effect either way. Now, pure limited to home isn't going to work with AC coupled, but anyways.
Jason asks, shade mitigation properties in the SolArc, i.e. optimizers or other for use on-grid and also off-grid. Sorry, not related to this exact webinar material. Well, I'll go backwards here. Jason, I think it's great that you're asking any questions. Guys, today's webinar is not just about off-grid. We leave the last 20 to 30 minutes open for any question you have about SolArc as a company, about the product, about some challenges you're facing in the field, or maybe you just not sure. Imagine like we're all sitting around having coffee or drinks together and we're just talking about stuff. That's what this is for, okay? So don't feel shy about any questions. No silly questions or anything. So about shading, yeah. So solar panels nowadays, they come with triple bypass diodes, so they really can mitigate a lot of the shading situation already. But if the strings have panels that are facing different directions, so different azimuth, or you really have some funky shading situation, then we've seen a lot of installers going with Tigo. They have an optimization that also includes the rapid shutdown with the CCA box. Dylan can maybe talk about that in a little bit more detail. But if they do not have really any shading situation, then we don't think optimizers are really necessary. In fact, we have some white papers that we can share that actually have some research coming out of various labs in Denmark and Germany where they've studied optimization that have actually found that it's not as helpful as we would have originally assumed. But if you do need optimization, no problem. We can coach you through that. But generally speaking, it's not necessary. Now, with that said, if the customer is prioritizing battery backup when they're grid tied or off grid, and they don't have the grid, of course, as a crutch, then just be mindful to angle your panels or design the array to face more west or southwest. We tend to find that more power is going to be used during those hours, so it is more helpful to have a little bit more direct solar panel exposure to the sun when it's in that position in the sky, rather than grid cell, where due south, and I'm speaking about the northern hemisphere, and the southern hemisphere would be the opposite. But in the northern hemisphere, having it due south, you would maximize your peak power, so your grid cell peak around noontime. So again, off-grid, try to face things more southwest. Did I cover everything, Dylan? Anything I may have left out?
Yeah, the only other thing is, generally speaking, I only find optimizers to be helpful if you're trying to put panels in series with each other that are mounted at different azimuths. Otherwise, I haven't found them to be useful, really. But, I understand some people want the panel level monitoring that comes with them, or sometimes people are already sold on needing an optimizer for whatever reason. So, yeah, TS4-0 is the one I'd recommend. Careful with the duos, because you can easily overvolt those if you're not careful.
Okay, Bruce asks, any updates on the remote shutoff option for fire department rapid shutdown on the battery system AC output? Will it be an option or added to the base inverter?
So we're aware of some municipalities requiring that, and I guess moving forward we have some stuff in the works. If you run into that problem in the near term, give my team a call or give me a call, and we can discuss how to get around that. There is a way to do it, but it's not really strictly built in quite yet. But we're working on doing that in the future.
And Bruce, I intentionally left out your question about trade pricing. In these webinars, we will not be discussing pricing unless it's on the retail level, MSRP. If you have questions about SolArc pricing on a wholesale or distribution level, please reach out to me at Andy, A-N-D-Y, at sol-arc.com, or our colleague Philip. His email is phil, P-H-I-L, at sol-arc.com, or just call us and press 1 for the business office. We'll be happy to talk about that with you. Okay, so Charlie asks, could you explain more about the number of battery strings allowed? I have always been taught a maximum of 3.
Sure. So basically, less strings is always going to be better, but of course. But we haven't had any problems going up to 4, 5, 6 strings even. As long as you take care to have sufficiently, I guess, almost oversized connection points between all the batteries in each battery bank in parallel. So like the parallel connections, like if you've ever seen our battery rack, we have some really beefy copper bus bars to connect all the 4 groups in parallel. And part of the reason for having such an oversized bus bar for that is to help prevent any one string from being underutilized or overutilized, which would cause some of the problems that I believe you're alluding to. So between that and connecting the inverter to the battery bank in kind of an offset way, you can imagine if you had a big rectangle of batteries, you would put one lead to the solar, say it's the positive on the upper right, and then you put the negative on like the bottom left. That way it's more evenly using the whole bank. And between those two factors, as well as some things we do in software with some, it's almost like an equalized cycle, but it's just at the absorbed voltage. And we'll do that every so often to make sure that all the cells are balanced. Between those 3 things, we found that it hasn't really been an issue to go to 4 or 5 strings in parallel.
Okay. Lance asks, is it true that heat pump water heaters use interior air to help heat the water? Are you drawing heat away from the furnace? Would this be more advantageous in a cooling environment? So the short answer is yes. And it's working similar, to kind of how I think like a refrigerator works. It's pulling heat and cool. Now I'm not an HVAC expert, but conceptually yes, that's how they work.